He told America it's all in the family, with an iconic television series that challenged society and all of its quirks. This week on One on One, meet one of Hollywood's most respected producers, Norman Lear.
In 1973, Norman Lear filmed an episode of Maude that CBS immediately locked away. The network said it went too far. Even for a show that tackled abortion and alcoholism, this one crossed a line they couldn't explain. The episode sat in a vault for 50 years. Studio executives who saw it said it would have destroyed television. Recently, someone leaked 12 minutes of footage online. What Maude said in that lost episode shocked even her biggest fans. It wasn't just controversial, it was devastating. Now you can finally see what CBS was so afraid of. Norman Lear used to sit at the dinner table and listen. His father, loud and angry, would argue about politics with Uncle Jack. The fights were sharp, messy, sometimes cruel. His dad was a proud Republican, bitter, racist, and sexist. Uncle Jack was the opposite. He cared about civil rights and justice. They clashed constantly, yelling across mashed potatoes and half-finished plates. Norman was just a boy, 9 years old, when his father went to jail for 3 years for fraud. But those family dinners never left him. He saw how different people could be under the same roof, how arguments revealed more than they hid, how laughter sometimes cracked open the truth. Years later, when he built his shows, he wasn't thinking about fake families. He was thinking about those dinners. That's how All in the Family was born. And that's where Maude came from. On December 11, 1971, Bea Arthur showed up for one episode. She played Maude Findlay, Edith Bunker's cousin. Archie was sick with the flu, and Maude came to help. But she wasn't sweet, she wasn't soft, she was sharp, loud, and completely unafraid. She fought Archie line for line. Her voice hit like a foghorn. And before the episode had even finished airing on the East Coast, CBS programming chief Fred Silverman was already on the phone with Lear. He said, "There's a series in that woman." Lear smiled. He'd been waiting for the call. 9 months later, Maude premiered on September 12, 1972. But CBS wasn't calm. They were terrified. William Tankersley, the man in charge of standards and practices, told Lear he was going to destroy television. That was the reaction to hearing toilet flushing sounds between scenes. The network had never handled real conflict before. Until then, sitcoms had been filled with fake farms, perfect smiles, and nothing serious. Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, The Flying Nun. That's what television was supposed to be. But Lear wasn't interested in fantasy. He wanted to show what was already happening in people's homes. Maude didn't hide from politics or pain. She walked right into it. She was designed to be the opposite of Archie Bunker. Where Archie was conservative, working class, and full of rage, Maude was liberal, educated, and unfiltered. She wasn't nice for the sake of being liked. She confronted everything: Vietnam, Nixon, alcoholism, abortion, mental illness, race, menopause, gay rights. Nothing was off limits. The character of Florida Evans, her black housekeeper, brought race and privilege into the center of the story. And when Maude's Dilemma aired in November 1972, just 2 months before Roe v. Wade, 65 million people watched Maude decide to have an abortion. That one moment proved everything. The country was ready. The show climbed to the Nielsen Top 10 with ratings of 24.7, 23.5, 24.9, and 25.0 in its first 4 seasons. Lear chose Tuckahoe, New York, as the setting for a reason. He wanted to show that politics didn't just exist in poor neighborhoods. Even wealthy suburbs had cracks. Tuckahoe was full of educated, upper-middle-class liberals, people with clean lawns and full wine racks who still had family fights and deep contradictions. Maude was one of them, and people related to her more because she wasn't perfect. She was angry, confused, loud, and trying. But B. Arthur didn't want the part. Not at first. She said no 3 times. She thought she was too tall, too old, and her voice too deep. She was 49. She thought people wanted sweet, small women like the ones on that girl. Lear had to go to New York and convince her in person. He told her the truth. American women needed to see someone like her. Someone strong. Someone who didn't shrink. She said yes when he promised that if she didn't like the script, he'd find someone else. But she liked the script. And she changed television. Even the casting of Walter Findlay caused problems. Bill Macy didn't look like a TV husband. He was balding, average height, not traditionally handsome. Executives said he looked like someone's accountant. But Lear fought for him. Because Maude's husband shouldn't be a model. He should be real. Viewers didn't need a perfect man. They needed someone who looked like the guy in the next room. Macy would later make headlines again in 1974 when he dropped his trousers at the Emmys and shouted a dirty joke. CBS banned Maude from Emmy consideration after that. Adrienne Barbeau was cast as Carol Trainer, Maude's daughter. She was 28. Arthur was 49. That 21-year gap was real. It made every argument about birth control, jobs, and feminism feel true. Barbeau had just been nominated for a Tony Award for Grease. She was ready for television. Lear wanted that generational friction. He wanted a daughter who looked like the new world and a mother still figuring out the old one. Behind the scenes, Maude had something almost no other sitcom had in 1972, a team of female writers. Susan Harris, who would later create The Golden Girls, joined the writing staff because Lear said male writers didn't know how to write women. She wrote Maude's Dilemma. Austin and Irma Kalish joined too. They helped write about menopause, domestic violence, late-in-life pregnancy, and the quiet pain of women trying to balance marriage with identity. These were women writing what they knew, not what men imagined. B. Arthur had final say on every episode that involved women's issues. It was in her contract. If a script made Maude seem too hysterical, too fake, or too soft, she rejected it. She had seen too many male-written plays where women didn't sound like women. She wanted Maude to feel real. That kind of control was almost unheard of for actresses in 1972. When Maude premiered, it exploded. It hit a 25.0 Nielsen rating almost instantly. By the end of its first month, 50 million Americans were watching every week. That was 1/4 of the entire country. Tuesday nights had never seen anything like it. Even advertisers lined up. Procter & Gamble and General Motors paid top rates because Maude's viewers were exactly who they wanted: educated, middle-class Americans with spending power. When the abortion episodes aired, all the big sponsors backed out. But the viewers didn't. They stayed. Of the nearly 200 CBS affiliates across the country, only 3 refused to air the early episodes. 2 were in Illinois. 1 in Detroit changed its mind after protests. That kind of support had never happened before for a show that made people this uncomfortable. And that was the point. Lear didn't want people to escape. He wanted them to see. When Maude succeeded, other networks rushed to catch up. NBC and ABC began building their own issue sitcoms. The old world of Beverly Hillbillies and Green Acres ended. Lear had 5 shows in the top 10 by 1974, and all of them were about something. In 1972, the writers of Maude weren't planning to change television history. They were just chasing prize money. A group called Zero Population Growth was offering $10,000 for any sitcom that tackled the idea of limiting population growth. So the writers started joking around. Vasectomies, maybe someone would get snipped, maybe there'd be a punchline, but it didn't feel strong enough. That's when Norman Lear looked at the team and said it plainly: Maude has to get pregnant. That was the only way people would pay attention. What started as a light-hearted brainstorm for cash turned into one of the most explosive stories ever told on American television. Susan Harris, the writer, didn't just imagine how a 47-year-old woman might react to being pregnant. She actually went out and talked to women who had lived through it. Late-in-life pregnancies, real fears, real choices. She sat down and listened to women talk about their health, their money, their families, their age. She didn't pull lines from newspapers. She pulled them from living rooms. So when Maude said she didn't know what to do, it didn't sound like acting. It sounded like someone's aunt or mother or neighbor, and that's what made it hit so hard. But not everyone wanted it told. Just one day before filming, CBS pulled the money. They didn't want to go through with it. They said no. They said maybe the whole thing should be scrapped. But Norman Lear didn't back down. He told CBS they could either air the episodes or find another show to take Maude's time slot. And that time slot was worth millions. The show was already a hit. Ratings were strong. Advertisers were happy. CBS knew they had more to lose by saying no, so they gave in. The taping went forward. Still, CBS had one condition. They wanted a character who disagreed with abortion. Not for debate, but to keep things balanced. So the writers gave Maude a friend, a woman with 4 kids who was pregnant with her 5th. She didn't believe in abortion. She said she couldn't afford more children, but still wouldn't end the pregnancy. She only appeared in 1 episode, but her role changed everything. Instead of a one-sided message, the episode became a conversation. And in a strange way, that little bit of network pressure made the story stronger. B. Arthur, who played Maude, didn't think much of it at first. She wasn't politically fired up about the script. She just thought it was a beautiful story. But it hit her later. She had grown up in a small Maryland town. She remembered what people used to do when someone got pregnant. Back then, it wasn't legal. But it still happened. And the letters started pouring in. Thousands of them. Some angry, some thoughtful, some heartbreaking. B read them all. She said the writers weren't crazies. They were human. And she admitted that, years later, she didn't know if she would have ended the episode the same way. When the episodes aired on November 14th and 21, 1972, the reaction was quieter than anyone expected. Just 7,000 protest letters came in. Only 2 CBS stations refused to air it, one in Champaign and one in Peoria, Illinois. For a show tackling abortion on national TV, it felt like a calm landing. Sponsors like PepsiCo and General Mills didn't pull out. Behind closed doors, their executives said they were shocked the backlash wasn't worse. And because this was 2 months before Roe v. Wade made abortion legal, most viewers still saw it as something far away, something other people dealt with, not something real in their own lives. So it passed, for a while. But then came August 1973, the reruns, and that changed everything. Roe v. Wade had passed in January. Now abortion was legal. Now it wasn't just a story, it was law. The United States Catholic Conference had spent months preparing, watching, organizing. When the reruns hit, 40 CBS stations refused to show them. That was 20 times more than before. CBS got over 17,000 protest letters. Every single sponsor pulled out. Not one company bought a commercial. CBS had to air the episodes with no ads. They filled the breaks with public service announcements. The show lost $600,000 per episode. For the first time in CBS history, they put up a warning saying the content might disturb viewers. And just like that, a story that had once aired quietly became a national firestorm. The Catholic Conference's campaign was so strong that it forced real changes. They watched the episodes over and over again, highlighting every line they thought crossed a line. One archbishop even quit a TV advisory board when his local station refused to pull the reruns. And they hit CBS at the perfect time, after the law changed when fear was at its peak. Their work didn't just make headlines, it worked. It scared the industry. For nearly 10 years, no network would touch abortion again. But even with the noise, something else happened. Maude's Dilemma was seen by 65 million people. That's 31% of the U.S. population at the time. It captured 41% of the TV audience during those nights, and that was with 40 stations refusing to air it. Even without full coverage, the episodes became some of the most watched controversial shows ever made. The message was clear. People watched. They didn't turn away. They leaned in. Controversy didn't hurt viewership. It fueled it. Norman Lear later said, "This proved something important. The loudest voices weren't always the majority. Most Americans could handle the truth. They didn't need it softened." In August 1973, CBS scheduled 2 episodes of Maude for summer rebroadcast. They had aired once before, back in November 1972. The storyline was simple. Maude, a strong-willed woman in her late 40s, discovers she's pregnant and considers having an abortion. The first time it aired, 7,000 protest letters came in, and only 2 affiliate stations refused to broadcast it. But this time, everything was different. Between the first and second airings, something major had changed. On January 22, 1973, Roe v. Wade became law. Abortion was now legal across America, and the country was split in 2. Suddenly, what had once been seen as fictional drama now felt like political messaging. What had been a bold story now felt like a battlefield. CBS didn't see it coming. They thought they were just filling a time slot. But this time, more than 17,000 protest letters hit their offices. Almost overnight, 2 local objections turned into nearly 40 stations refusing to air the rerun. It was the biggest affiliate rebellion in CBS history. Behind the scenes, a young bishop was moving the chess pieces. Bishop James S. Roush, just 44 years old, had been appointed as General Secretary of the United States Catholic Conference. He didn't scream on television or protest on the streets. He organized. He wrote letters. His campaign looked like a military operation. Almost 20,000 Catholic priests received carefully worded instructions on how to pressure CBS affiliates, advertisers, and station managers. The letters told them what to say, when to call, and who to contact. The goal was clear: make sure those episodes didn't air. He called CBS's choice irresponsible, especially because the show aired when children could be watching. Roush didn't just stop at letters. He built a system that turned one group's outrage into a nationwide storm. His quiet coordination became a playbook that other religious groups would follow for decades. Then came Archbishop John F. Whelan. He'd been part of WTIC Television's Program Advisory Committee in Hartford. But when that station decided to air the reruns anyway, he quit. He didn't just leave quietly. He made it public. Whelan had spent years being seen as moderate, even progressive within the church. He supported women's roles in leadership. He talked with leaders of other faiths. But this issue was his red line. His resignation gave others permission to take bold action, too. If someone like him was stepping down, others felt free to raise their voices, write letters, quit their posts, and take the fight further. The protest didn't stop at letters or titles. It became personal. Norman Lear, the man behind Maude, started getting photos of dead fetuses in the mail. People showed up at his house. They laid down in front of his car so he couldn't drive. In New York, they did the same to CBS founder William S. Paley. These weren't random acts. They were planned, timed, and targeted. They were meant to scare. Lear had seen controversy before, but this was something new. It wasn't just about the show, it was about him. It was about making him stop writing stories people didn't want told. And it worked. It shook him. It made everyone in the industry pay attention. The economic fallout was unlike anything television had ever seen. On the nights the reruns aired, August 14th and August 24th, 1973, not a single corporate sponsor ran an ad. Not one. It was the first time in TV history a major network show aired in prime time with zero paid advertising. CBS had to fill the breaks with public service announcements. They even added a warning before the show started, telling viewers they might want to skip the episode if it would upset them. It was a network's quiet apology while still moving forward. But the numbers told a louder story. That two-night decision cost CBS $750,000 in lost ad revenue, roughly $4.5 million today. For a company that made around $800 million a year from primetime programming, it still hurt. Big companies didn't just pull their ads, they ran. Pepsi, General Mills, Alberto Culver, J.B. Williams, and the Pharmacraft division of Penwalt all pulled out. For some of them, it was the most complaints they'd ever received in their corporate history. It wasn't just the calls, it was the threat. Protesters showed up at their buildings. Their executives got targeted. Protesters laid down in front of their cars, too. And it didn't stop with direct advertisers. Companies that had worked with CBS before, or were even just loosely connected, started getting hit with calls, letters, and boycotts. Some had never even advertised during Maude, and still ended up on protest lists. Then came the second wave. The boycotts started spreading like wildfire. Catholic groups made lists of abortion-supporting companies and handed them out in churches. Families were told not to buy from those businesses. Stores got quieter. Sales dropped. It worked so well that companies became afraid to advertise on anything that even might be controversial. It didn't matter what the content was. The fear was enough. Being seen as connected to the wrong episode could get you targeted. And once you were on a boycott list, it was hard to get off. Some companies that tried to stay strong eventually gave in. They couldn't afford to keep bleeding money. The protest had become bigger than one show. It had become a weapon. That moment became the blueprint. What happened with Maude showed everyone how to control a message without passing a single law. The Catholic boycott wasn't just loud. It was smart, organized, and devastating. It proved that a religious group could stop a story before it aired, not with government censorship, but with economic fear. Other groups took notes. Groups like the National Federation for Decency and the Coalition for Better Television used the same tactics in the years that followed. They went after shows about sexuality, violence, race, religion. Anything controversial was now a risk. Writers started pulling back. Studios started double-checking. Network lawyers began scrubbing scripts. The chilling effect had begun. By 1992, even the writer of the original Maude episode, Susan Harris, admitted that things had changed. The climate was colder. The fear was stronger. The economy was tighter. The networks, she said, just didn't feel they could take a stand anymore. What happened in 1973 wasn't just a backlash, it was a shift. It showed the power of organized protest. It showed how a group of people, if loud enough and focused enough, could change what millions of others were allowed to see. In 1973, things got heavier. That fall, Maude opened its season with a story that made America stop breathing. The episodes were called Walter's Problem. In them, Walter, Maude's husband, spiraled into alcoholism. It started after a night of heavy drinking, when Maude woke up in bed next to their neighbor Arthur. Both of them had been too drunk to remember how it happened. They swore off alcohol together, but Walter couldn't stop. He kept drinking. He said things like, Dean Martin gets $1 million for his buzz, trying to laugh it off. But it got worse. He passed out in scenes. He snapped at Maude. And then it happened. The moment no one saw coming. In a drunken rage, Walter hit her. The scene was raw. It was the first time a sitcom had shown a husband hitting his wife. Beatrice Arthur didn't want to film it. She said it was too disturbing. But Norman Lear insisted. He said they had to show it. Not to shock people, but to prove that Walter really had a problem. It wasn't a funny moment. It wasn't played for laughs. The bruise on Maude's face was real makeup. The silence after the slap was real. Walter had a full breakdown afterward. He couldn't stop crying. He couldn't live with what he had done. And that's when the audience realized this wasn't just a show. This was something else. Thousands of people complained. Religious groups said the episode was disgusting. They said it was promoting divorce. Some said it should never have aired. But groups that worked with alcoholics said it was the first time they'd ever seen their reality shown honestly on TV. Lear had spent 3 months writing those episodes, researching how alcoholism looked behind closed doors. And for once, a sitcom didn't make it a joke. Walter's drinking didn't go away after 2 episodes. It stayed part of him. Through the rest of the series, he kept admitting it. He kept trying to stay sober. The problem didn't vanish. It lived in him, just like it does in real life. That same year, Maude tackled another quiet crisis: cosmetic surgery. In the 2-part episodes Stitch in Time and Maude's Facelift, which aired on October 19, 1973, Vivian came back from a vacation looking completely different. She'd gotten a facelift. Maude was stunned, suddenly jealous, suddenly insecure. She started thinking maybe she needed one too. The episodes talked about the surgery in detail. What it was, how long it took, what it felt like afterward. They even showed before and after pictures. The network didn't want those on air. They said it was too much, but they aired anyway. And for the first time, a show talked about women aging and how society made them feel ashamed for it. Vivian said, "You have a husband. It doesn't matter what you look like." But Maude wasn't so sure. The real reason behind the facelift storyline was that Rue McClanahan, who played Vivian, was much younger than Bea Arthur. She had been wearing wigs and makeup to look older. But when she became a full-time cast member, the show had to explain her sudden change. So they used real life as the plot. And people watched Maude wrestle with something that felt so familiar: the fear of becoming invisible. But nothing prepared anyone for what came next. In 1972, just 2 months before Roe v. Wade, Maude aired Maude's Dilemma. It was a 2-part story about abortion. Maude, at age 47, found out she was pregnant. She and Walter had to make a choice. After thinking it through, she decided to have an abortion. She said it was her decision. She said it was the right one for her. The audience sat in stunned silence. There were no jokes in that moment, just truth. When it first aired, there was some backlash. But the real firestorm came during the reruns in August 1973. That's when the United States Catholic Conference sent out materials to 20,000 priests, telling them to pressure local CBS stations not to show the episode again. It worked. During the original airing, only 2 stations refused to air it. But during the rerun, 39 stations pulled it. CBS got 17,000 letters of protest. Sponsors refused to buy ad time. CBS had to run a warning before the episode saying some people may wish to refrain from watching. And just like that, a new kind of pressure was born. Religious groups had found a way to silence what they didn't like by targeting advertisers. That same tactic would be used years later against shows like Ellen and films like The Last Temptation of Christ. When Norman Lear and Brent Miller tried to include Maude's Dilemma in their Live in Front of a Studio Audience specials for ABC in 2019, the network shut it down. They had already done successful recreations of All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Good Times, Different Strokes, and The Facts of Life. But when they suggested Maude's abortion episodes, the answer was no. Not now. Not today. It had aired in 1972, when abortion was illegal in most places. And yet, nearly 50 years later, it was considered too risky. Miller thought the world was ready. ABC didn't agree, but even though the episode couldn't return, its legacy did. Susan Harris, who wrote Maude's Dilemma back in 1972, used what she learned when she created The Golden Girls in 1985. She brought B. Arthur with her. And this time, she wrote about AIDS, homosexuality, aging, chronic illness, all with the same honest voice. In 1989, Harris wrote her own chronic fatigue syndrome into an episode called Sick and Tired, where Dorothy, played by B, couldn't get doctors to believe her pain was real. The show won an Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series in 1987. It ran for 177 episodes. It made people laugh, and it told the truth.